Hi, I'm Jacob Wood from Accessible Games, and today we're talking about accessible game design with Rich, Liam, and Barney. It's always been my opinion that every person deserves to find the game that's right for them, even if not every game is for every person. With that in mind, I feel it's more important than ever that we really think about accessibility and the needs of others when we're designing games, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I'm not the best person to introduce these fine folks, though, so I'll let you all each introduce yourselves. We'll start with Rich, please.
Hi there. Good afternoon, where you are. Most people are, and even here. I'm Rich. I'm the director of Hatchling Games. We make all ages TTRPGs, and we promote sign language and deaf awareness through them. Our first game, Inspiriles, Inspirirsles, that gave players a strong introduction to ASL and BSL, and a sequel's launching in February on Kickstarter, and it'll expand the learning. We eventually want to translate the game into many other sign languages and see them up and down countries in schools. That's kind of our ambition.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Liam, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Liam Erven. I am from Chicago, Illinois, and I am the creator of Lworks, which creates games for those with visual impairments. I've made a lot of headway into the audio game space by charting ground, creating the first ever accessible platforming game. And I've also created several other pick up and play titles and have done work on the side as a mod creator for Grand Theft Auto 5 to attempt to increase accessibility of the game. I've also done some work on creating accessibility mods for Forza, and I stream as well to promote awareness of accessibility in gaming for those that are blind or visually impaired.
Oh, so awesome. Thank you. And Barney, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Barney. I have the podcast Loco Ludus, which I've been doing for nearly 2 years now. I'm also a games facilitator and designer. I currently have a digital exchange project for young people between Germany and Wales, and that's called Tricksters Net. And the game that I'm here to talk about today, I suppose, and my experiences with, is League of Eternal Guardians, which I've been working on for this year, I would say. And League of Eternal Guardians, which I'm going to be running tomorrow with a band of plucky players.
Fantastic. So, before we start talking about our own projects, I wanted to just get to know each of you a little bit more in terms of what accessibility really means to each and every one of you, because I know it can be different for every person individually. And I'm going to go in the reverse order of what I had just done with our introduction. So, Barney, what does accessibility and game design mean to you specifically?
Gosh, I mean, that is such a tough question. What does it? I don't have a visual impairment. I don't have a hearing impairment. I have other human things, but I when I started thinking about League of Eternal Guardians and the type of thing I wanted to publish, I started thinking about who I want to publish it for. And I very quickly thought I'm not sure I want to publish it for every people who want infinite stretch goals and fake leather embossed covers of, that's not what it's for. And I'm a language teacher, so communicating language is very important. I'm also someone who forgets all the rules, and I love them. I love rules. So I think that I design games, minimalist games with crunch where it counts. That's my aim. So in a way, accessibility to me on this kind of journey of wanting to become a better human being and a better game designer is for everybody to be potentially able to play it, to try and think of as many different kind of learning or play styles as possible, in order to allow, like you said in the introduction, as many people to find if they like this kind of game, if they like the game I'm designing, then it's there for them regardless of what they what accessibility issues they might have. I guess it would be nice if there wasn't the need for it, right? But that's kind of stating the obvious, I think. It's a very, very woolly, roundabout answer to the question. I hope that was okay.
That absolutely works for me. So, Liam, you've done some video game design and audio game design work, it sounds like. What does accessibility really mean to you and what your mission is?
So accessibility to me means removing any barriers that keep everyone from playing together. Ultimately, trying to make things playable for the largest variety of people as possible, so that everyone can enjoy something together. Obviously, gaming is key for mental health and for social interaction, and so I am a big believer in making it possible for everyone to play together as much as humanly possible. And not only that, but making things that are easy to play and fun to play and easy to pick up and play.
That's awesome. And how about you, Rich?
We're largely echoing Liam's kind of sentiments about accessibility, but I was thinking today, like actually earlier before the panel started, about my experience of being interviewed in different situations and appearing on camera and off camera. And I find it really difficult to talk to people that I can't see, as opposed to some other people who prefer not to be on camera and just do it through, through podcasts and things. So I just think accessibility means different things for lots of different people, and lots of different situations that people are in, really. It can be very specific or very broad. But definitely making a game, we try to make our games as accessible and inclusive to as many people as we can, really, especially when working with the all ages kind of like part of the industry. So it comes down to language, for instance. Without talking down to young people, children, we're still making it able to run the games from 13 plus. So yeah.
That's a really great point. Accessibility is not just accessible to people with disabilities per se, but to people of all ages, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, Rich, can you go on a little bit about why accessibility is important to you specifically? So, not just game design as a broader term, but what is your journey, or what kind of brought you to decide that accessible game design and ASL and BSL in your games was so important to you?
Well, I've worked with the deaf community for about 12 years now. It's my day job, basically. I work for a charity before it's transformed to a sort of like a limited company, and we support vulnerable adults with special educational needs. And through that job, you realise the importance of communication, from the way information is presented to community engagement. We did a lot of deaf awareness in the local community, and introduction to sign language and deafness. And it's been essential for not just a job, but like my kind of growth as a person as well. And we've kind of taken those principles of that 12 years working with the community and applied it to the games. And because of my connections and experience with my deaf colleagues and friends, we've been really able to develop the RPGs with kind of integrity. We're not taking any shortcuts. We're doing everything with real kind of like focus and with consultation from experts. And we're ensuring we got involvement from the actual community around us, the deaf community, and even the hard of hearing writers and artists that we're getting on board for the game. So yeah. So it's integral to my life, really. It's my day job has paralleled my sort of hobby. And I've managed to combine the two, thankfully. It's been wonderful.
Oh, I love that you have been able to do that. That's awesome. So, Liam, how about you? What's your kind of accessibility journey, or your kind of core reasons from who you are as a person and why you've chosen to make accessibility a focus of your game design?
Oh, geez. Do you guys have a couple hours? No, I'm kidding.
In 2 minutes
Really,
or less.
okay, that's okay. So in a nutshell, it was essentially I wanted to play games. I couldn't play games because blind people tend to be marginalized and left out of gaming. Just I think as a matter of course, because trying to develop for blind gamers is very difficult and requires a lot of work. And so I said, what can I do to help move this forward? What can I help do to give us games to play? And I wanted to do it since I was a child. Got a Nintendo when I was 4. Didn't have a lot of success, but enjoyed playing it. And said, okay, I'm going to learn to code. I'm going to make things. And ultimately, I mean, it's led from breaking major ground to meeting a lot of wonderful people and being able to give back to the community, which has been a really wonderful thing to do.
That's awesome, and like be the change you want to see, right?
Oh, for sure, no question. I mean, really, ultimately, it's about trying to. I always say you should leave the world a better place than when you found it.
That's awesome. And Barney, you kind of touched on this a little bit yourself, I think, but can you expand a little bit on what accessibility means to you specifically and kind of your journey into accessible game design?
Sure. I think what we're all talking about here is that there's real opportunity in a space to think about gaming more ethically in a broader way. You know, this is an ethical issue, I feel. And I'd just like to flag up a good friend of mine, Joe Richter, who has the Hindsightless podcast. He really opened my eyes, as it were, if I may say that. He opened my mind. He opened my mind to this. You know, I mentioned being a teacher and thinking about games. You know, it's very interesting to hear Rich talk about his projects. I was initially thinking, oh, role play games in the education space, language acquisition. And then that just kind of bled into discussions with Joe, who doesn't make a big thing out of his visual impairments. I think it just, I'd kind of never thought about it before. And then it just really struck me that there are loads of people who just basically can't play role-playing games, and it should be so easy, you know. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing that in my work.
I love that. You're right. It should be so easy. And role playing games is something that I kind of fell into myself when I started losing my vision. Not that you guys need to know my story in detail, but I was a video gamer as a child. And then as my vision got worse and worse, I turned to RPGs. And then I realized that they weren't as accessible as I guess I had to make them accessible for myself. And then in doing that, it became time to start making them accessible for others. So I'm so glad that we have fine gentlemen like you all who are on board with that as well. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of um, negative experiences that we've had with accessibility and game design because we could go on that path for a very, very long time, I feel. But what kind of positive experiences have you had with game design and accessibility, Liam?
So one story really sticks out to me. And creating a game, embarrassingly enough, I created a platformer that was audio only, and it's called Super Liam because I'm horribly unoriginal. But it was what I wanted to make when I was a kid, so I was like, you have to do it, you know. But the one I think, if you were to ask me, like, what is the one thing that sticks out? A friend of mine had a small child, and he was probably maybe 5 or 6, and it was his birthday. And he used to listen to his dad play these games, and it was sort of a bonding thing for them. Obviously, his dad couldn't play the sighted games he played, but he liked to listen to his dad play these games. So Super Liam actually called him for his birthday and wished him happy birthday. And he got to talk to the character for a few minutes. And I cannot tell you what it is like to reach out and touch somebody in such a way like that, and be, you're not just a character in a game, but you're something that, a child has now, that's a memory that will last a lifetime.
That's amazing. I love that. And Rich, what about you? Do you have any positive experiences with accessibility in game design?
I thought about this. I don't think the positive happens so much within the actual game design process. Instead, I think we've been able to connect with so many other creatives like yourselves, prioritizing accessibility. And it's helped us kind of educate us beyond just deaf awareness and sign language. And kind of it's really informed the game design process. So like as a result, we've got dyslexia friendly fonts, we've got like rigorous safety tools, and we've got mechanics for like reflection and empathy, which has been really well received from, especially from like school environments and like educational sort of areas, where the kids can play through their sessions of their role-playing sessions, and then really reflect on what's happened and all the positive things that's taken place. So yeah, there's loads of things that I've getting through these panels and through like talking to my fellow creatives about how they're implementing accessibility tools.
That's fantastic. And I really love how you mentioned the safety tools, because that has been a really important part of accessible design that I think can be integrated easily into any game. It doesn't matter which system, it's all universal.
Yeah.
And Barney, how about you? What kind of positive experiences have you had in designing accessible games?
I mean, I'm just learning so much, and it's great to listen to what the others are saying. So it's that I just consider to be a positive thing. It's challenging with the software and stuff, and it's a massive challenge. But I consider trying to get my head around that. A positive thing. I've really enjoyed the design process, I have to say. Like I said, starting off with just wanting to have a game that you don't have to consult pages and pages of text on. The core rules are 4 pages, so the whole point is that when you've internalized it, that's everything, and you're just ready to go. And trying to do that has been a really exciting challenge. And that's for me about what I can carry in my mind as well as anything else. But yeah, with my visually impaired players, I have just been fantastic and really helpful, and I've learned so much. And I suppose the last little thing, I like the theatre of the mind approach, and it was really nice to hear from one of my players that worked really well, or that was really evocative. So I just that was an affirming moment for me in developing the game in that way, that it's I'm not coming from a place which needs maps and tokens and those kinds of things.
Awesome. And I love that you mentioned the word challenges so many times, because that was literally going to be the next question and topic. So I'm going to leave it on you, Barney. What kind of challenges have you really faced when designing accessible games? And go into a little bit more detail.
It could be the technology thing. I installed something on my computer that would, read stuff, a screen reader, and it kind of comes up when I switch my computer on, even though I've maybe got it switched off. So it's always talking to me. And, you have to dig into the technology really quite deeply. And I feel really at the beginning of that, and I'm kind of looking around and thinking, "Wow, what next?" So that is also a challenge. And I guess I mean, I'm so impressed how, if we take the case of visual impairment, I'm so impressed how people with visual impairments get round all of this technology, because I struggle with it in the normative kind of way. So that's incredible. I just think that's incredible, and I hope that in the future things are going to get a lot more streamlined. Everybody.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of our goal, partly with the Everyone Games event here, is raising awareness for those sorts of things and trying to raise funding to um, help develop more of those tools and make sure that the awareness gets out to other publishers. And with that, we're going to go ahead and plug our fantastic charities that we are working with today. We are raising money for Able Gamers, which is a video game foundation, and also Special Effect, who is another similar foundation out of Europe, I believe. So if you want to donate to either one of those charities, feel free to follow the links at everyone-games.com, and make sure that you are doing your part to really kind of help raise that awareness, because it's not just one person who stands alone as an island who has to do all of this by themselves. As you can see just from this small panel of folks, it takes teams of people to really make things happen, and we're doing that here today. But that was my own little kind of soapbox rant. Liam, what kind of challenges have you faced in developing or designing accessible games?
I think the biggest challenge, honestly, has been charting new ground. It's kind of going, well, no one has done this. How do we do this? And so it's been a lot of just thinking. Actually, the hardest thing was coming up with when doing a side scroller, figuring out, well, how do you tell somebody that something is in front of them or something is behind them? And I actually realized, well, if it's a side scroller, everything is a side view. So you put things in front of you in your right ear, things behind you in your left ear. And I actually came up with this when I was half asleep one night and was dozing off to sleep and had that aha moment. So I had to jump out of bed and write it down before I forgot. And it's amazing, actually, to see the number of developers after me that have kind of taken the ideas that I started and have kind of worked on them in their own ways and really sort of made other things that are actually much greater than what I've done. But it's cool to be on the ground floor. I would say that's the biggest challenge. I think another big challenge has just been trying to get people to realize that these games are out there and that they can play them. And that's been one of the things that I work on, and trying to do outreach and things of that nature. But really, I would say that there's a lot more rewards and very few challenges.
That's awesome. Rich, how about you? What kind of challenges have you faced when designing games for accessibility?
The main two, one's quite minimal. The other one's quite broad. So the minimal one is just writing for basically very young people to be able to run the games. Like, it's not just the players with like an adult DM or like an experienced GM. We've tried to build the game so that 13 plus can actually run whole sessions themselves. I did like a creative writing degree when I was younger, and quickly learned that writing for young people was far more difficult than writing for adults. So that was the sort of small challenge. The bigger challenge we faced was designing a game from the hearing perspective. Obviously, there was quite a lot of cynicism and skepticism from some of the deaf community, especially when we started out. But thankfully, once we've had a chance to actually open that discourse and that communication with a lot of the members, they're really like appreciative of what we're doing. Really, when we explain all the inclusivity we have and how long we've worked within the community, then that all sort of fades away and they become our best sort of supporters. Really.
Awesome. And so the next question that comes up is, what kind of tips and tricks and tools have you used to overcome some of those challenges? And a few of us have touched upon that already with using the right and left ear to determine direction. But what other kinds of tips might you have, Rich, to help with accessible game design?
I just found, I mean, our main sort of support comes from Twitter. Like we've built a community there for over a couple of years now, really, since way before we started development on Inspirals. And I think the one tip is just communication. I think we've really used all the resources around us to ensure the projects are the best they can be, really. It kind of helps that I'm a born extrovert, but it doesn't take a lot of effort to kind of boost other creatives, share your experiences, and be supportive. And I think community is kind of at the heart of what we do, and it's not really a coincidence that there's a big community behind us now. I think what you put in, you get back from these sort of sections of communities, and it's served us well, and it continues to build well, really. So it's just communication, really. I think keep those channels open, keep boosting others, keep talking to others.
That's fantastic. Communication is so important for everything that we do. Barney, how about you? What kind of tips and tricks have you found that help you with your designs?
Hey, I'm gonna slightly, I'll take this and slightly distort the question a little bit, because something I'd really like to say is that I'm much more an advocate of minimalist games than of rules light games. And I think that it's an interesting proposition to try and juggle things that are straightforward and simple and clear, concise, still offer some crunch, like I said at the beginning, some kind of interesting mechanics to make the games a little bit distinctive, that still require your mind to be doing things, but not to be having to go and pick up a book off a shelf or consult some big long rules. So a balance between simplicity and some kind of crunch or dynamic mechanics. That would be my tip.
Nice, I like that. And Liam, you've gone into that in a little bit of detail, but what other types of tips and tricks have you found that help you in designing accessible games?
So honestly, I think the things that help me and actually help other developers are twofold. The first thing is to think about accessibility early. Don't tack it on to the end. And you'll hear this a lot in some other panels, but start early, work on accessibility early, make it the driving focus. Also, to consult with people that are smarter than you are. Find accessibility consultants. Find others that do what you do, but maybe do it better and have different perspectives. Danny posted in the Twitch chat here a minute ago and said, teamwork makes the dream work. And, it's cool to see Blind Toes and Shasters agree with this as well. And I think we can all agree that when we work together, we actually make better things. And so I would say cooperation and delegating to people that know these things and starting early.
That's awesome. Thank you. So the last question that we have to kind of round things out before we close up is it worth it? Is this something that is really just timely and time consuming and costly, and there are only a handful of people who are going to play your games anyway, so what does it matter? Or is there something that's actually worth your time and investment? And Liam, I'll go ahead and leave it with you. What do you think about that?
So I would certainly say that yes, accessibility is an investment of both time and financials. But I will say that look, I'm so popular. I would say that the return in investment of not only people playing your game, but the impact that you're making is worth everything that you can do. Apple has a document and they lay out the reasons for inclusivity and accessibility, and they have all these reasons. And it ends with, why should I make my application accessible? Because it's the right thing to do.
Mm.
That's awesome. And Rich, what do you think? Is it worth it to you?
I honestly think if we hadn't done it right and we'd taken shortcuts, it would have failed from nearly just off the start, really. I think it's accessible design and the sort of passion for it is essential to success, and it's also to do with longevity of a game. I think it will last a lot longer, especially as the whole industry seems to be thankfully moving in that direction. Especially like we talked about safety tools earlier. It seems like you can't release a game now really and get a recognition without having rigorous safety tools, which is great. I just feel sort of privileged to have taken my education and work with the deaf community and maybe carved a potential career at 42. So it's great. Definitely worth it. Definitely worth it.
Awesome. And Barney, what do you say to people who tell you that what you're doing just doesn't have a big enough impact? Is it worth it?
I mean, just to pick up on something that Liam said, this kind of don't think about accessibility after the fact. I think that's so key. I've heard that kind of, make it accessible later. And I just think Liam's absolutely spot on there. Really, in this design process that I've been going through with the game, it is about building it up to be clear and functional for everybody and fun. So I don't know if it's worth it because I haven't published League of Eternal Guardians yet. It's all been going really well. Lots of play testing with lots of different people. I was gonna start it in Zine Quest, but then things didn't happen. So is it worth it? Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. I hope so. But for me personally, absolutely. The idea that you could ignorantly exclude swathes of people in something that you're doing, which you wouldn't do like face to face on the street in a city. The fact that you might work on something and publish it and basically just ignore a whole groups of people, I just think is ridiculous.
Awesome. Well, obviously that was kind of a loaded question, but I absolutely agree with all of you. There's so many valid reasons to design games with accessibility in mind, and not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's the one thing that everybody can agree on. And I guess sometimes how you struggle to find those right words. Everyone agrees, I think, just kind of at face value, that it's something that people should do. But there's so few people, relatively speaking, who are willing to put forth the work to get it right the first time. And that's, again, one of those things that we need to raise awareness for, because it's not enough to just go back and retrofit accessibility onto your product or to your game, because it doesn't work. You've got to start from the ground up, and you've got to start from day one.
Yeah, I would add to that. And from personal experience, we could have probably, like a lot of people say, we could have just dumped essentially sign language learning in the middle of the role-playing game, but we had to make it completely integral to the whole system and the lore and the mechanics and the characters. So anyone could take a sign language manual and just throw it into the middle of any sort of game, but it's important to make it integrated and not tack things on and not make it a gimmick. All these things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining me today. We are going to make some room for the next session coming up at Everyone Games at 3 o'clock. But before we go, I'd like each of you to tell us where we can find you and what you're doing. So, Liam, where can we find you online, and do you have any major projects coming up?
So you can find me mainly on Twitter and YouTube at Liam Erven, and I can spell that out: LiamErven. And on YouTube, I do a lot of reviews of games. I have talked about a lot of voice first games. So these are games that are controlled by your voice. I also play a number of other audio games, and I guess Twitter is sort of an extension of that. I mean, it's Twitter. We just, everyone writes things on Twitter. But those are the best places to find me. I'm not currently working on anything right now. I've sort of shifted to doing a lot more accessibility outreach. I have been working with some companies to do testing and compliance and help them make the best games that they can possibly make.
Oh, that's awesome. Barney, where can we find you?
So I go by Loco Ludus most places. I'll spell that out. LOCOLUDUS. On Twitter, that's at Loco_Ludus. Facebook, Loco Ludus. Gmail, locoludus@gmail.com. And the podcast, Loco Ludus, which is an Anchor podcast. And people can leave audio messages if they like. So I'm very open, very well, please, if anyone wants to leave me a message, they're very welcome to. Yeah.
Thank you. And Rich, where can we find you?
I'm mainly on Twitter, so I'm at Hatchling DM. And we've got the sequel to Inspire Isles. It's going to be called Over Isles because it's set in the sky on floating islands. And that's coming out to Kickstarter in February, the 1st. And we've got a landing page for email sign-ups, and we're going to have really exciting early backer sort of rewards tiers. And so just sign up there. I don't know if it would be in the chat, but if you go to my Twitter account, then you can find thousands of links to it.
Thank you very much. And I'm Jacob Wood. You can find me at Accessible Games just about everywhere. And you can also find me at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, right here on Everyone Games. I'll be running my game Survival of the Able, the game about people with disabilities overcoming a zombie plague in the Middle Ages. And I hope to see everybody there to see
Can I also point out really quick?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Jacob. I will actually be on some panels as well. I don't know if Rich or Barney will as well. I will be on the community panel in a few hours, and then we're also doing a Blind Dungeon game tomorrow. I will be a dwarf with a completely different voice.
That is
I already
awesome.
feel bad for those that have to do the real-time sign language because I'm going to have a really funny accent. So I will do my best.
I'm not on any other panels, but I am running a game of League of Eternal Guardians tomorrow. So in the con time, EST time, that's 11 till 2.
Awesome. And Rich, are you going to be doing anything else with Everyone Games?
I don't believe so, but in the future, 100%. I might even trying to run a few sessions of the sign language games in the future, maybe.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all again so much. We are going to make room for the next session, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
All right, thank you, interpreters. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure to be here.